Today we're going to catch up with Damon Holst. Um, it has been a while since I've seen Damon and gotten to talk to him, so I'm really looking forward to this. So thank you, Damon, for being with us today and sharing with my students.
Absolutely.
We are going to just start with what I always start with. Share a little bit about your high school experience. And I know that you did transfer into Marion, I
Yep.
believe, right? And
Yep.
so you can just share a little bit about, what you were involved in and that kind of thing.
Yeah. So I spent 2 years at Marion, had moved from St. Louis, and came in as a junior at the beginning of the school year, thankfully. But yeah, so I did my best to just stay involved and get involved as much as things as possible, just to make sure that my transition was as quick as possible, and it worked pretty well for me. I think I fit pretty well with Marion, and I liked it there a lot. So at Marion, I graduated in 2011, so almost 10 years ago now. And I was involved in FBLA, so we should mention that first, right? But in addition to that, I did marching band, I played golf, I played tennis, I was in the French club, NHS. I can't think of anything else, but I'm sure there were a few more things that I was doing.
Those were big ones, yeah. I do think overall, I think Marion students are pretty welcoming when new people move in. I think if you're willing to jump in, as you said, I think that usually goes pretty well for people. So,
Oh, for sure. Yeah.
And I remember you were in the top 10, and I believe you spoke at graduation too,
I did
right?
see graduation. We had a little bit of a controversy because three of us wanted to speak, and we had decided beforehand that that would be fine. We would just split the time. And so we had to have the conversation, but then it ended up working out. So I think it was the first year that we ended up having multiple speakers at graduation, but it worked out well.
Yeah. And now they just go straight to back history lesson for current students. Back in the day, there was the top 10, and then wouldn't they kind of vote on who spoke? It wasn't necessarily the number one and number two who spoke, right?
Yeah, and that's kind of how it was when we did it.
Yeah.
But there were three of us in the top 10 who had expressed interest in it.
Gotcha.
And we were all friends, so it was like didn't really make sense for us to vote on one of the three if we were all willing to share.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So that's what Damon's referring to. Now they just do 1 and 2, and that's just how it goes. But yeah, Damon, you would have thought he grew up in Marion and lived his whole life here because he was well liked, and everyone enjoyed his company. So from graduation though, 2011, May of 2011, kind of catch us up to speed on what your career path has looked like from then to where you are today.
Yeah, so for the majority of it, I've been here in Chicago. I came to school up here, went to Elmhurst, and I majored in international business and had minors in political science and French. So originally I went in thinking that I may want to be president one day. I did win, most likely to be president, senior class, so there you go. But I quickly realized that I was better at the more tangible stuff. So I really enjoyed the business classes and decided to kind of change my major and go that direction. And the reason that I did international business was because I had done French for a long time, and studying abroad was something that I was interested in. So I ended up studying abroad in Paris my junior year first semester, which was awesome. And I think everybody should do that. It's kind of the only opportunity that you're going to have that in your life. And for me, and I know for a lot of other people, it ended up being a little bit cheaper than studying here and just doing another semester at home. So it was kind of a no-brainer for me, and definitely kind of widened my experience level, gave me something to talk about when I was going into more of that kind of professional stuff. So graduated in 2015, and I'd done 2 internships during college. One was during my sophomore year summer. I worked in Decatur at a marketing agency that did mostly hospital systems. So we did a lot of like community outreach and advertising, and just helping them, have a specific message that they wanted to communicate. So that was really interesting, really fun for a summer. And then after that, I ended up my junior year starting an internship at Brand, where I ended up working full time after I graduated. So I worked there as an intern while I was at school at Elmhurst. I worked 3 days a week, did like 30 hours. And then whenever I wasn't in school, they allowed me to work full time.
Cool.
So doing that for like a year and a half, I was pretty well entrenched into the company culture, understood what they were doing, but I still felt like there was a ton for me to learn. So that's where I put all my focus and effort into, was getting a full-time job there. So did that after college, and I was an associate product manager there for 5 years, basically, including my internship. Acco Brands is a company that makes office products. So they own 5-Star, Mead, Swingline, a lot of the, the office products or school supplies that we use every day, that company makes and distributes. So as a product manager, worked on product development almost exclusively, which has kind of become my career path. So I did that until March of last year, and then I got a new job working for a company called Scotsman Ice. And they make commercial and residential ice machines. The commercial business is a whole lot larger than the residential business, and a residential ice machine is really only for the super elite who have those nice custom kitchens. But yeah, so if you go into a McDonald's or a Sam's Club and go to the cafe or anything like that, there's usually a ice machine above the soda dispenser. And so we make that. And then there's also an ice machine in every commercial kitchen in the back of the house across the country. And so I work on the parts and service business. And I'm a product manager on the parts and service business, which means that I have responsibility over all of the after sales parts to be able to support the product after the point of purchase. So pricing strategies is my responsibility. And then on top of that, I also am the liaison for the service group to all of our new product development projects. So I still get that element of product development that I really enjoyed in my previous job, and that's kind of expanded my responsibilities beyond that.
So I'm going to try to approach this from product development and then talk more about your current position, and which you still, like you said, deal with product management. So what does product management involve? We touch on it just a smidge in marketing, but I think that would be valuable for my students to hear.
Well, I guess one thing that I'll mention before I explain what it is that I think that, especially high school students and even college students, our understanding of what marketing or what business really means is it's limited. You guys are doing a great job at trying to expand our minds, but I think without any real world experience, it's so hard to know what to do when you sit down at the desk, right? And going and getting a business degree, it's not all about sales or being an entrepreneur or those kinds of things. It's just really helping the infrastructure of the world, products and services and all those things are moving and producing and being sold and all that kind of stuff. So there is I could say I work in business and do one thing and be completely on the other side of what I'm doing now, and it would still have the same I would still have the same career path until today, I guess. So anyway, what we're going to is, what does product management mean? So I see product management as kind of like I am the owner or the keeper, or I'm responsible for a subset of products or services that my company promotes and sells. So there's a lot of decisions that have to be made about the product itself, price, position, all that kind of stuff. And there is definitely a strong association with marketing with that. But then also on the product development side, it is kind of the concept of what the product should be and the product roadmap, right? And understanding what the consumer is going to need next year and 5 years and 10 years, and starting to develop those products to fit those needs of the consumer. So at ACCO, I did more strict product development for more durable goods. So I worked on a brand called Quartet, which made whiteboards and other communication type products, so easels. We also made all different stuff related to dry erase, so dry erase markers, erasers, cleaners, all that kind of stuff. And so what I was doing was my job was to understand what the market need was and also manage our current subset of products. So what I would do is say, okay, we have this individual need for a certain product that has a certain feature set. And then what I would do is I would work with all the different functional areas of the company to bring that product from a concept to market. So that included design work with both graphic design and industrial design, working with our engineering team, as well as our sourcing team, which were mostly located in China. So I was communicating with our Chinese coworkers and counterparts on a daily basis. We would have meetings kind of swap back and forth with a 7 a.m. meeting or a 7 p.m. meeting, so that one day we'd get up early and then another day they'd get up early, or vice versa. And then also working, we had a domestic manufacturing plant that the company owned itself. So I did a lot of work with them as well there, and going to the manufacturing plant, which was in Mississippi.
So yeah, you're looking at every aspect, like what does the customer want? Can we make it? Can we make it at a cost that's effective to be able to resell it at a price that they're willing to buy at? There's a lot of things that come into play there.
Yeah. One of the things that's so fascinating to me that I understand about my job, that I know outside in the other world that there's other products that haven't come to market, is that there are so many things that the idea is good, but we can't make it because of some sort of constraint, whether it's a cost constraint or we just don't think the market's big enough. But there are so many things out there that you probably think about on a daily basis that someone else has tried to make, but it just didn't make it.
Uh-huh.
So
yeah, that's true. In our marketing class, we do a new product development project, but I tell them, like, leave out the element of whether it's cost effective. Obviously, we don't have the time to work with real engineers to figure out if we can actually make this, but it's just kind of a fun thing for them to do, to be creative. And every once in a while they'll come up with an idea, and I've had kids that have gone and researched, and there are patents for the things that they've thought of, but it's never made it to production, that kind of thing. So for sure. So now you are working on the side of customers may already have the products, and you're making sure they get serviced in the proper, or they get the parts and the things that they need for them to be serviced correctly.
Yeah. So we have kind of the parts and service group is one organization, and we all kind of work on both sides of it. But the two elements that we're doing is both making sure that our customers have the support that they need as far as parts to continue to use their product, but also making sure that they have the service to actually fix the part. So we have a team of techs that work in our office that are on the phones all the time, that are talking with techs in the field who are actually working on the machine.
Gotcha.
We just use local service providers across the country that then we build relationships with and train so that they know our product, and then they go out. And I really like that because there's an element of small business to my job every day, even though I work, in a corporate office.
So are you involved at all with, like, doing training videos or developing product manuals or things like that to help those technicians that are in the field?
Yeah, so that's another element of the product development process. So we identify the support resources that are needed to support that product, and we're responsible for developing those and distributing them. So documentation like manual, service manual, user manual, parts breakdown, all that kind of stuff falls under my responsibility. And then this is kind of something new that my company has kind of brought me in to help out with. And I have limited experience, but I'm excited to do it. It's to try to build out some other type of training resources. So we do training with our techs, usually in person, but we want to develop more webinars, which actually, now this is even more relevant. So we're a little behind the game, but we're starting it beforehand. And then also building out our YouTube library, because we know that, and I know for sure, that if anything breaks in my house, the first place I'm going to go to figure out how to fix it is YouTube.
Yeah.
So developing those resources for YouTube, so that somebody, if they want to do something minor like clean their ice machine, that resource is easy for them to access.
Absolutely. I think, and that interests me from my background. My master's is in workforce education. So that can spin off in different ways. It can be in a classroom, but it also can be HR training, or, training for technical skills and things like that. And developing the right means for doing that. And you're right, like the YouTube and the video demonstrations are what most people are drawn to. So that's really neat. So you really have your hand in a lot of different things.
Yeah.
Which is really probably rewarding, because you're kind of getting to see both sides of what needs to be done, and so that's really cool. So what skills do you think are most important for someone to be successful in this industry or this area of your industry?
I'd say three things. The first being communication skills. If you can't communicate with other people and find a point of commonality to be able to have a conversation and achieve whatever the goals that you're trying to work towards, it's going to make everything more difficult. So not saying that you can't be successful with, being a shy person or an introvert, both of which I'm not, but so that makes it a little bit easier for me. But, communication is definitely key. I think the second thing is definitely just kind of program management or project management, however you want to define that for yourself. So understanding what your workload is, what are the prioritization of that, and then, kind of how are you going to tackle that and when it's done, and making sure that you're communicating to the right people status as that thing is nearing completion. I struggle with that every day. So I'm not saying that I've mastered that, but it's definitely a skill that you need to be aware of and continue to work towards. So your teacher's giving you deadlines for a reason, so that you can start to learn those skills. And pretty soon you're not going to have those deadlines just outlined to you, so it's going to make things more difficult. So building that strong base of some project management skills is great. And then what did I say the third one was? I don't know. I forgot it. I'll come back to it maybe.
That's all right. I want to talk about the project management thing for a second. And I'm not, this is going to sound like I'm throwing shade to my management class in the fall, but I'm not. But I do believe that's an important skill for students to start developing in high school. And so I had a management class. This is only my second semester teaching it. And so I'm still trying things out, kind of figuring out what I like, what I don't like, what works, what doesn't work. And I try to customize it so far based on the student's interests,
Yeah.
So the first semester we tried a project where we kind of divided the class up. We looked at the whole class as a business and divided the class up into different segments of the business. One's going to do project planning, one's going to do public relations. We tried to spread things around. Well, this year we tried something different, and I asked them each to pick whatever charitable group they wanted to do, and to come up with some kind of project that would benefit. And I said, it doesn't have to be a fundraiser. It can be a public relations campaign. It can be a public awareness, but you're going to have to come up with 3 goals for your project. And you're going to have to meet with the people at the Philanthropic Association and sit down with them and figure it out, timeline out what you're doing. And your project has to be done. I gave them a deadline and end date for it.
Yep.
And we're weekly check-ins. It did not go well. I'm going to say I failed as a facilitator. Something went wrong. There were, I would say, less than half the class could grasp doing that on their own. Even with the weekly check-ins, it was hard for them to sit down and timeline out, like, what steps do I need to take?
Yeah.
And I think they kind of thought I was being, I don't know, just giving them busy work to make up objectives. But really, when you're working, a lot of times your boss says, I need this done 2 months from now. I don't know how you get it done, but you've got to have it completed,
Right. Yeah. And I think a lot of it comes down to just understanding and getting used to the idea that you're going to have to self-manage. But one of the things I think might be worthwhile sharing here is, for me, a huge realization, and it didn't come until after college, and I did a kind of a 3-day project management course. And the biggest takeaway from that was the difference between effort and duration that it's going to take you to get a task completed. So, like, effort is like, if you were completely undisturbed. How long is it going to take you to complete this task? And it might be 15 minutes, right? But the duration that it's going to take you to actually complete it, based on the fact that you've got 12 balls that you're juggling, might mean that it's going to take you 2 months. You just got to figure out where that 15 minutes is going to sit, or if it's going to be 7 minutes here, 7 minutes later. Obviously, 15 minutes is like obviously a small task here, and most of the time we're going to deal with something larger. But you know, understanding that you have multiple things going on at the same time. So you saying, oh, that's a small task. You have to think about how that's going to fit into everything else and saying, okay, it's a small task. It might normally just take me an hour or 15 minutes or whatever it is. But I'm not going to be able to get it back to you until, 2 weeks from now because of where I'm at.
Yeah, yeah.
The third thing that I was thinking about was Excel skills. So I use Excel every day, right? And that's how most of my work outside of emailing is done in that program. And it is a magnificent tool. And I think probably now I'm 10 years out of Marion, so you guys are probably doing it more than you were back then. But I didn't even really get that much of it in college, and that was one thing that I knew going into the professional world that would have been something that would have really helped.
Miss Nazi will be very happy to teach that in her computer concepts class. They do a really big unit on Excel. We touch, we did in freshman seminar, which is now called Digital Citizenship. We touch on the spreadsheets, Google Sheets, but it gives you the basic idea of framing. That class is no longer required for freshmen, so we don't see as nearly as many in it. But I agree. But that is something that I will keep in mind, though, and try to incorporate the spreadsheet stuff even more in my other classes that I teach.
Yeah, and I think just in general, encouraging students to seek out that kind of, whether there's a class or a Saturday course that you can take or something like that. Just getting a good base knowledge in that program is going to, it's just going to take you so much farther, especially in the interview process, because they're going to ask about those kinds of things. And for you just to kind of name drop different tools that are in those programs, just you having knowledge of them and that they exist and that they're tools that can be used and are vital to getting the job done is going to, like I said, speak volumes in the process of getting a job. But then once you sit down at the desk, it's going to make your life so much easier.
I agree. And that when you can, it's such a, Excel especially is such a powerful program. And when you can talk to a potential employer about the efficiencies that you can bring to the organization, that's going to make them very happy. So
yeah, one of the things that really benefited me when I started my new job was just, while I was trying to figure out how everything worked and the company culture and what I really wanted to do, I did a lot of just listening and watching and all that kind of stuff. And then looking at their processes and just making a suggestion and say, hey, this is how I've been doing something before. I think we can apply this here, and it's going to take all this time out of what you're doing, is an easy way to make people like you. So.
Yeah, I agree. You're absolutely right. We've got our seniors picking things up and dropping things off. So I was doing a little dropping stuff off in my room. So what advice would you give to juniors or seniors if you were a guest speaker in my classroom today, or if you could go back and talk to Damon as a junior and senior in high school? What are some important points you would?
I was thinking about this beforehand, and I think that, to my own credit, I think some of the things that I would give you guys, or give high school student suggestions now, are some of the things that I was trying to think about back then, but didn't have an understanding of how those things would affect me. So, like I said at the beginning, getting involved and just jumping into a bunch of different stuff, whether it's something that you know or something you might find interesting but don't know a lot about, or there's people in that group that don't look like you, don't sound like you. All those kinds of things that are going to bring those different perspectives and just kind of bolster who you are as an individual and your skill set, do it. And college is a great place to just explore yourself in that way. And kind of pushing off of that, just being open to that journey and the lefts and the rights that it's going to take. understand that life is going to present you with opportunities at pretty much every, interval. And as long as you recognize that as an opportunity and then try to take advantage of it in whatever way you can, I think you're going to be doing well. One of my biggest anxieties in college was not knowing truly what to do. Like, I was going through college, doing all my courses, doing great. But when I thought about like a job and my first day at the job, I sit down at the desk and I turn the computer on. What am I going to do? And so I would say my biggest takeaway from that was an internship. So don't skip out on that process. Do it early, do it often, get as many internships as you can. And if you got a good one, hold on to it. That's what I would say, I guess.
The value of internships continues to come up in these interviews, and I agree. That gives you a window into what a day in the life is like. Because even when we have guest speakers come in and talk, until someone can watch kind of the day, a day in the life, it's valuable. And then if you actually not only get to watch but get to spend some time there, I think that makes a big difference. That is one of our goals as a department, is to start an externship program for Christmas break and spring break.
Yep.
It wouldn't be for very long, but for a few days at least, to get some.
I am so happy to hear that. And the reason I say that is because when I was a sophomore, I still wanted to move back to Marion, and I still would like to be able to be in Southern Illinois at some point in my life. That would be great. But what made that difficult for me is that I wanted to try to seek out opportunities to get myself kind of entrenched in whatever the business of Southern Illinois was. Mm-hmm. So I came home for spring break my sophomore year, and I had kind of somebody in the community that was well connected within the small business world. And I went to like 10 or 12 different places, from like Harrisburg to Carbondale. And I said, hey, understand that you don't have an internship program and may not really understand what that means. But I want to be able to contribute to the community in some way. And I want to learn what that means now, as opposed to trying to figure out when I graduate. So if you have an opportunity for me to do something, I would love it. And I think everybody received that really well, but they just weren't in the space to be able to provide that for me. Mm-hmm. So some say unfortunately, some say fortunately, I was able to find an internship elsewhere, and kind of has taken me in this path where I'm still in Chicago. But it's great to see that, because I think that there is a concern about the brain drain potentially, right? And one of the things that I've been watching the interviews daily with you is that it's great to see people branch out and be in different places and do this. But I would have loved to see so many more of these students saying, okay, here's how I'm back in Southern Illinois and doing this and contributing to this, or I'm in Southern Illinois and I'm working for this company that is more global, and it's not just about Southern Illinois, So I haven't figured that out as how I can help move that forward, but the program you're talking about sounds like that's a step in the right direction.
We're working on it. I think our biggest in a normal school day is, time limitation. So that's why we're kind of pushing towards, well, we do have a lot of students that maybe don't go anywhere over Christmas break or spring break, and we can use, or even summer, we can use that as a springboard to kind of help. And hopefully we are going to have we did feature a local controller. I've got another local controller coming. I've got a small business owner that is coming down the pipe that we've done lots of interviews. So I think these are going to end up running in through the summer, which is great. So yeah, I agree with you. I love to see our talents flourish here at home as well. That's, and I'm big on entrepreneurship, because I do believe there's no law that says we all have to share that same pie. We can make more pies, figure out how to make more pies in Southern Illinois and see us grow. So I agree with you there, Damon. Well, thank you very much.
Thank you.
I really appreciate you taking time to do this, and it's good to catch up with you. And the next time you're in town, let me know, and I'll get you into my classroom to talk with you there.
Fair enough.
Thank you.
Thank you. See you guys.